They told you to speak up, to fight louder, to shout your truth into the noise of the world until it overpowers every doubter, every critic, every shadow of resistance. But they were wrong. Power, real power, does not raise its voice. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't beg to be seen. It waits, it watches, and when the time comes, it strikes like lightning, fast, precise, undeniable. The strongest minds in history didn't conquer with noise. They mastered the art of silence, not the silence of surrender, the silence of strategy, the silence that listens while others boast, that plans while others panic, that builds while others broadcast. Because in silence, the mind sharpens, the vision clears, the fire grows hotter. You cannot hear your calling when the volume of the world is maxed out. Carnegie knew it, so did Edison. When the factories roared and critics laughed, they closed the door, dimmed the lights, and thought. They didn't need applause. They needed clarity. They needed silence to summon the power within, the power that every great soul must harness if they ever hope to lead. You don't become powerful by being the loudest in the room. You become powerful by being the most centered, the most rooted, the most in control. And that control begins in silence. Not the kind that makes you invisible, the kind that makes you unpredictable, unreadable, unshakable. Because when you no longer feel the need to explain yourself to the world, you have already won. Most people never master silence. They fear it. They see it as weakness, as retreat. But silence is not the absence of sound. It's the presence of focus. It's where the inner world becomes louder than the outer. When the world distracts, silence disciplines. When the world reacts, silence reflects. When the world brags, silence builds. Muhammad Ali spoke loud when he needed to, but do you know what made him unstoppable? It wasn't his mouth, it was his mind. It was the quiet hours in the gym, the repetition, the sweat in silence. He didn't become the greatest because he said it. He became the greatest because he trained like it long before the world noticed. Silence is the birthplace of dominance, because in silence, you're not chasing the next word, you're chasing the next move, the next mental edge, the next invisible layer of strength the world will only understand when it's too late. There's a reason why the Navy SEALs say, be calm, be still, be lethal. In the silence, they prepare, not in the noise, in the stillness, because those who stay calm in chaos win. Those who can think in pressure lead. Those who can act without announcing succeed. You want to become a force in this life? Then you must master the pause, the space between the impulse and the action, the seconds when your emotions flare and your ego wants to explode. But instead, you breathe, you sit with it, you own it. And in that silence, you make your choice. Not a reaction, a decision. That is power. You don't need to clap back at every insult. You don't need to answer every challenge. You don't need to explain every move. Because lions don't concern themselves with the opinions of sheep. And you are becoming a lion in a world full of barking dogs. Let them bark. Let them chase noise. You walk. You observe. You build in the dark. You see, the mind is a battlefield, and the loudest voices are often the weakest minds. Napoleon Hill warned us, your mind is your only true estate. You must learn to control it, or it will control you. He wasn't just talking about fear or doubt. He was talking about the noise, the endless stream of opinions, distractions, and demands. He was talking about the addiction to validation, the slavery to social approval, the disease of needing to be seen before you've even done the work. But you must rise above that. You must learn to move in silence and let your success make the noise. You don't need to tell them what you're building. You just need to build it. You don't need to prove them wrong. You just need to win. Because when the storm comes, it doesn't announce itself. It arrives, and it changes everything. You must become that storm. Quiet, powerful, focused, unstoppable. This is the new standard. You master your mind. You guard your energy. You choose your battles, and you protect your silence like a weapon, because in silence you learn to think, and thinking, deep thinking, is the rarest power in a world obsessed with instant reaction. Abraham Lincoln once said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." What do you think he was doing in those 4 hours? He wasn't scrolling. He wasn't arguing. He was thinking. The mind that can wait, that can sit with discomfort, that can stay silent while it sharpens, is the mind that dominates when it counts. Let them underestimate you. Let them wonder what you're doing in the silence. Because the next time they see you, you won't be who you were. You'll be sharper. You'll be stronger. You'll be ready. Not because you made noise, but because you made moves. Silence is power. Not because it says nothing, but because it speaks everything without needing words. It is the signal that you are no longer looking for approval, no longer broadcasting weakness, no longer leaking your energy to every passerby who pokes at your spirit. Silence is the posture of someone who is in control of their thoughts, their emotions, their reactions. And that kind of control is dangerous in a world that thrives on distraction. The loudest one in the room is never the most powerful. It's the one who sees everything, who says nothing, who waits, the one who doesn't need to prove, doesn't need to react, doesn't need to win the moment, and because they're here to win the war. Think of the greats. Abraham Lincoln, a man of few words, but when he spoke, the nation listened. Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times, but not once did he waste his breath defending his failures. He let the light bulb speak for him. Oprah Winfrey, ridiculed, rejected, fired, yet she never shouted back. She rose in silence, built in silence, conquered in silence. When you master the power of silence, you master the power to redirect energy inward. That's the key. Because the game is won inside before it ever shows up outside. You build the empire first in your imagination, in your heart, in your invisible discipline. That's where power lives. Talk is cheap, execution is rare, and silence is the chamber where both are decided. Because silence is focus, and focus is the seed of greatness. When you don't respond to chaos, you conserve energy. When you don't explain yourself, you conserve clarity. When you don't defend your vision to people who were never meant to see it, you conserve belief. Silence protects the garden of your mind. And the mind, once it is unguarded, is open to attack. Doubt, fear, comparison. They slip in quietly, disguised as logic and concern. But silence, true, intentional silence, becomes the firewall, the defense, the unshakable stillness that keeps the storm outside. Because let me tell you something, no one builds in the storm. You build in the calm. You train in the quiet. You sharpen your sword in the shadows. But what do most people do? They broadcast. They talk big dreams before they've lifted small fingers. They leak plans to people who only know how to doubt. They trade the sacred stillness for the empty applause of temporary attention. And then they wonder why their energy's gone, why they can't finish, why they feel stuck. Because they gave away their power in the form of words before they ever turned those words into results. Don't be one of them. Be the one who builds in silence. Let your consistency make the noise. See, silence isn't passivity, it's presence, it's strategy, it's composure under pressure. Michael Jordan didn't talk trash in the first quarter. He let the scoreboard do it for him by the fourth. Beyoncé didn't tweet her hustle. She dropped an entire album without a word of promotion. Steve Jobs didn't spend time arguing with doubters. He just built Apple. You don't win by convincing people you're winning. You win by winning. And that begins in silence. It's in the silent hours that you face your real enemy, yourself, your laziness, your excuses, your lack of belief, your impatience. And if you can win that battle, the one no one else sees, you've already won the war. Because all transformation is born in the silence. That's where the internal dialogue shifts. That's where you start asking the real questions. What am I doing with my time? What am I willing to sacrifice? What am I waiting for? And when you sit with those questions long enough, without distraction, without numbing yourself with noise, the answers rise. Most people are afraid of silence because it forces them to hear themselves. But the ones who embrace it, they hear the call to rise. They hear the roar beneath the stillness. They hear the fire that's been waiting to burn through the lies and light up the truth. So yes, silence is power, but only if you use it. Use it to think, to build, to train, to center, to refocus, to separate yourself from the chaos and come back with clarity, because the world is loud. But the ones who change it, they're the ones who listen before they move. And when they do move, they're unshakable. So now you know, silence is not absence. It is presence. It is not weakness. It is waiting. It is the mark of someone who knows exactly what they carry inside and doesn't need to shout about it. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful, because true power does not beg to be noticed. It demands to be respected, quietly, steadily, with eyes that don't blink and a spine that does not bow. The ones who build empires in the shadows, the ones who walk into a room and shift its energy without saying a word, the ones who are underestimated, overlooked, dismissed until it's too late. They are the masters of silence, and silence, when mastered, becomes a language of domination. So if you feel invisible, let them. If they doubt you, let them. If they think you have nothing to offer, let them believe it, because you're not here to convince them. You're here to become. Speak less, move smarter, build relentlessly. Let your actions roll like thunder from behind the veil. Let the silence be your strategy, not your sentence. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more power. And power is not something you shout. It's something you embody. The quietest force is often the deadliest. The stillest water hides the greatest depth. The calmest soul survives every storm. So retreat into the silence, not to escape, but to evolve, not to hide, but to rise. Because when the time comes, you will not announce yourself. You will arrive with no warning, and everything will change. Remember this: lions do not roar when they hunt. They wait, they stalk, they strike in silence. So let them doubt, let them talk, let them sleep on you. But when your moment comes, let your silence speak louder than anything you've ever said. Let it roar.